Hi everyone, Quiveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. In today's video, we are going to be looking at the analemma. So the analemma is a sort of figure eight shape that the sun draws in our sky over the course of the year. The analemma has been the subject of the past two Irish language videos, so if you've watched them, I will talk about a couple of different things in this version of the video. I will go through things a little bit differently, but I will compress what was covered in those videos. So we will take a look at the analemma from here in Ireland, and we will also take a look at the analemma from the equator. So here we are as the sun is setting on the equinox here on the 20th of March. We do have Mercury over there as the sun is setting. Of course, Mercury is very hard to see and it won't be there for very long. Jupiter is there a little bit longer. Here are the stars. I forgot to turn them on. But we can see that Mercury, it is bright. It is a bright object. It is a planet, and they are generally quite bright. But we can see that it is still outshone by stars like Sirius. Whereas Jupiter, it's so bright it outshines any of the stars. Only Venus and the Moon, of course, can compete with Jupiter. So here we are. I'll point us a little bit more towards the south. 8:30, nice and early in the night, on the night of the equinox. We've got Orion nice and clear. The moon is moving into Leo. We've got Gemini. It's a nice looking sky and there's plenty of things to observe. But we are going to be concentrating on how things look during the day. So we're going to pull back here to the middle of the day. The sun looks like it's above the south, or at least pretty close to it here at 12:30. We'll bring up our azimuthal grid. So this puts the middle of the sky as the zenith, right above your head. It's not the only way to break up the sky. We can bring up this equatorial grid, which has the middle back there where the North Star would be, and it pretty much shows you where the Earth's equator would be projected out into space. And of course, it's roughly the Earth's equator that faces at the sun, and we can see that the sun is right there on that line. We could use this grid. We can see there 0 hours for being directly in Greenwich Mean Time, or UTC, Universal Coordinated Time. There is a reason the acronym doesn't quite match up with the title in English. I'm going to stick with using the azimuthal grid just because it's I prefer it and it fits to your location. So as we're going to be changing location, this grid will change with us, and that'll keep it looking pretty much the same. So we can see here as we zoom in on the equinox, there's the sun. Yeah, at 12:38, it's still a little bit off. Moving it over there a little bit brings it back into the center, or brings it up to the center there at about 12:20. We can keep zooming in and get even more accurate, get even more minute with this grid. We'll push a little bit over. There we go. Well, went a little bit past it. There we go, pretty much in the center there at 12:41. Make sure the time is paused. When you've zoomed in this much, the sun drifts a surprising amount, even in the space of a second or two. Yeah, that's pretty close to being exactly in the center there at 12:40. We have discussed in previous videos why the sun is getting directly above the south at 12:40 for us here in Ireland instead of 12. It's because 12 happens for us and Greenwich in London. 12 happens for the entire time zone at the same time according to the clocks. But of course, as the Earth turns, the sun will reach its exact center point in the sky a little bit later as you move away from the center of the time zone, or a little bit earlier if you move back in the other direction. But there it is. There's the sun at pretty much the most middle-ish position in the sky it could have. We're going to stick with 12:41 here, and I do believe that daylight savings time is turned on. So we're going to see this 12 turn into a 1, but that's just because of a human thing where we change the clocks for daylight savings time. It's not going to change the position of the sun in the sky. So we can see the sun here rising up towards its highest point, sinking down towards its lowest point. And we can see, I hope that you can see, that the sun is varying a little bit from side to side as it goes. We'll zoom in a little bit to try and make it a bit more obvious once we come back to the equinox next year. So that was an entire year, nice and quick. We want to keep the ground in view. We want to keep the horizon in view. From here in Ireland, the sun will get pretty close to the horizon. So we're going to do it again. From the equinox in March, the vernal equinox, we can see the sun moving to one side of that center line, reaching its peak, crossing back over and sinking back down, crossing back in the opposite direction, reaching its furthest over to one side. And it does get a little bit tough to see with the color of the sky here, but the sun loops back over and then starts moving its way back up into the sky. And there we are, pretty much back in the middle for the 20th. I went a few days past it, but now we are into 2026. I'm going to get rid of the atmosphere first, and then the stars, just so they're not getting in the way. And we're going to do it again. We're going to move backwards so we get back to this here. So there's the sun right in the middle in its most middling height in the sky. And we can see that it comes down very much to one side, crosses back over around its lowest point, moves back up the other side, and then crosses back in towards the center. Now you can see that it doesn't necessarily cross that central point on the equinoxes exactly. It does move a little bit from side to side, and the way that the sun moves from side to side like this doesn't line up perfectly with the equinoxes and the solstice. So usually the sun will reach its very lowest point around there, a little bit to one side of the line, as we can see, and it'll do the same when it reaches its highest point. So we're nearly back there now. This is winter 2024, so we'll get back to March, but it's coming back up and starting to cross over that line there. We can see that it's quite high when it starts to cross that line, and it's crossing it a little bit, not exactly on the autumn equinox, coming back down. There is a comet at 12P Pons Brooks, so the 12th periodic comet. I'll get back to that comet in a future video. And there we are, coming back down on the 20th, just onto that line. So that's the Analemma. That is the figure 8 shape that the sun traces through our sky. And it is a little bit of a wonky figure 8. We can see it goes a little to one side and a little to the other side. It doesn't perfectly line up with this line in the sky. And that's thanks to the Earth's orbit around the sun. So as we orbit the sun, it is an ellipse in which we orbit the sun. It is not a perfect circle. So for some part of the year, we're a little bit closer to the sun. For other parts of the year, we're a little further away. So of course, there's parts of the year where we're moving towards the sun, and there's parts of the year where we're moving away from the sun, relative to our closest and nearest points. Of course, we are orbiting the sun, so we never get too far away from it. I am going to bring us right onto the equator now. I will be filling in all of these numbers with zeros to do it. So this is how we break up the coordinates on the Earth. You have your degrees first. But when you're breaking up the entire world into 360 degrees, all of your degrees of a circle, if you only broke the Earth into 360 chunks, the Earth's pretty big. So those chunks all end up pretty big as well. One kind of square area bounded by degrees, like from 0 degrees north to 1 degrees north and 0 degrees west to 1 degree west, that kind of square would be huge. It's quite a big division. So the degrees are broken down into minutes and seconds, so you can get a little bit more precise. So we are exactly on the equator, exactly in line with Greenwich. And if we look up into the sky, there's the sun, pretty much in the middle. Now, we have moved from where we are in Cork to being exactly in line with Greenwich. So that means the sun should be reaching its highest position in the sky a little bit closer to actually being 12. We can see there we're at 12:15. We'll move back a little bit more. We're at 6 minutes past 12. That's pretty close. There we go, about 7 minutes past 12, and the sun is pretty much in the middle of the sky. So that will do. I'll stop time for moving so it doesn't drift away from us. That's the sun at its very highest. This is what the Analemma would look like from the equator. So I'll very quickly go through it during the day, and we can see the sun moving off to one side there, very much on the right-hand side of our screens, crossing the line, coming back up, almost looking like it's in the exact middle of our screen, crossing back over there to definitely being a little bit on the right-hand side, and then swinging around on the bottom, looking like it's pretty much in the center of the screen again, pretty much lined up with south, a little bit over to the right almost, and then crossing that central point again. So we can see that even at the equator, the Analemma is a little bit lopsided. Even if it becomes a lot more even, and the loops that we're seeing on each side end up being pretty much the same size as they should be when we're at the equator, the figure 8 shape is still not directly in line with north and south. And that's because this figure 8 shape, the reason the sun is getting pulled away from a direct forward back seesawing of the zenith, is because of the way the Earth is moving. For part of the year, we're going to be catching up to the sun, or moving in the direction of the sun and our rotation. And for part of the year, we're going to be moving away from the sun. So that's going to change the apparent position in our sky, but not in an even way, because we're changing it kind of in one direction on our way in and another direction on our way out again. So here we are just coming back to the autumnal equinox in 2025, and we can see that the sun is very much off to the side there at 7 minutes past 12. If we move back, we can see that the sun is coming to that central point in the autumnal equinox, or the September equinox, pretty much there on the 22nd at pretty close to 11. If we move it back a little bit, 10 to 12. So not that close to 11, really. Still a lot closer to 12 than 11. But this is just another way of showing that the way this figure of 8 moves in our sky, it doesn't perfectly line up with the solstices or the equinoxes. The sun reaches its furthest south position in the sky here, a little bit after crossing its line. Or is that south? That's north, I think. It's very hard to tell when you're at the equator. Yeah, so this way is looking south. When we would see the sun at its lowest in the sky, at the equator, it's just at its furthest south. It's still really high up, and I can show that here. We'll do summer first. That's where we're going to hit first. So we can see that on Midsummer's Day, which is around here, the sun is very much on the northern side of the zenith, but it's still, oh, we're moving forward in time, I want to move backwards. It's still very, very high in the sky. So as the sun does this yo-yoing from one side to the other, the length of the day doesn't change too much. We can see that the sun is at its very highest there for the equinox at the equator, and it's a little bit lower because it's further from the zenith during midsummer and midwinter. So this is one of the reasons why the solar calendar, if you're using the sun to measure your day, doesn't always work perfectly if you're at the equator. So there are some cultures that live near the equator, or at least started near the equator, that use a lunar calendar instead. So instead of breaking up the year into how many times we orbit the sun, it breaks up the year based on how many times the moon orbits us. And that, of course, makes those calendars drift out of sync because the lunar orbit doesn't match up with the Earth's orbit around the sun. So the calendars end up working a little bit differently. That's just a little glitch in Stellarium, but it is a handy way to tell that you're looking exactly at the zenith, exactly at the middle of the sky. And we can see that the sun isn't exactly on it, but these things don't work out perfectly. If we were slightly to one side of the equator, you can see by the way the sun moves across that point, it's very similar to a conjunction. If we were on a slightly different line of longitude, or longitude, or longitude, however you want to pronounce it, then the sun's center will be slightly closer to that. But it is so close that it's not going to make too much of a difference to a human observer. So that's the Analemma. That is the topic that I covered in the past couple of Irish language videos, surmised for the English language audience. Of course, it was spread across 2 videos, so I did say a lot more in the Irish language videos. They do have English subtitles, so feel free to check them out if you would like. If you did like this video, then make sure to like it. And if you enjoyed this kind of content, then make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also check out some of this information written down on queebeanscontent.ie. But I hope you enjoyed these videos, and until next time.